Welcome to Backup Exec 2012 Fundamentals. In this lesson we will talk about architecture and components. If you're following along in the book, we're in lesson 1 of the Install and Configure book. The topics in this book are data backup basics. We'll talk about why you care about data backups. We'll talk about the different offerings that are available to help you back up your data. And then we're going to go into the benefits and functionality of Backup Exec 2012. The last section is that we will talk about the components and architecture of this version of the product. Data backup basics are, why do I care? I have data that is on my client's machine. That's where the clients access it. That's its primary storage. So for example, if I have an Exchange server, my users using Outlook are accessing their email that is living on the Exchange server. When we back it up from its primary storage to secondary storage. In this version of Backup Exec, it is highly recommended that that secondary storage be back up to disk. So your disk-based backups on the secondary storage can then be duplicated to yet another location. That location could be disk, another disk in a different location, or it could be tape, that you could back it up to tape for long-term storage, off-site storage. Backup to disk is known as B2D, and then we would duplicate that to tape, so that's B2D to T. And often you'll see that written with numbers. So it's just the letters and the numbers, B2D to T. Would indicate that we're going from primary storage to disk to tape. So you can have your backups in many different locations. You back up data to keep from losing the data. And often it takes data loss for people to really believe in backups. You can always tell people who believe in backups. I often tell students in my classes that there are only two kinds of networks in this world. Those that have had a disaster and those that will. And if you haven't had one yet, you're due. So you back up your data so that you can keep all of your files, all of your directories, all of your databases, all of your data in case something horrible happens. Horrible things can easily just be hard drives or virus infections. They can be natural disasters. More often than not, the biggest threat to data is ourselves. We as users delete things that we shouldn't, or we overwrite things that we shouldn't. If you have a backup, you can recover that. There are many forms of backup. There are some embedded in the operating system, like shadow copy, which we're going to talk about later. Backup Exec, though, allows you to have data in multiple locations so that if something should happen to the physical backup in one location, you would have the data in another location. So you can have data as many places as makes sense in your environment. Some of Backup Exec's offerings are, and we have a slide for each of these, that we're going to go through which of these solutions is best for you. So let's talk first about backup software. Backup software is for those environments that have an IT staff and dedicated hardware for IT that they can install the software and run it themselves. There are several versions of Backup Exec that are available to you. You see them listed on the slide. You have a small business edition that is written for Microsoft Small Business Server. This is the server that is running Active Directory, DNS, DHCP, Exchange, and SQL, and you can back up to 5 other servers with this edition. You also have the V-Ray edition. This mostly has to do with the virtualization. There's also an edition that's not listed on the slide here that's known as the Enterprise option. The Enterprise option combines several of the other features of Backup Exec into one licensing package. All of these that I've just described are designed to be run by a local IT staff, though. So this is something that you would have to have your own hardware and people to operate. Another version of Backup Exec is a backup to the cloud. This is maybe if I don't have an IT staff, I can go to a managed service provider who will run my backups for me, and they're going to pull my data up into their own managed service cloud. Some commercial examples of clouds are Amazon, Symantec has a cloud service, but this could also just be a facility that they are running for you to house your backups. For example, I could be a managed service provider for dental offices, and I back up multiple dental offices into my own data center, and I need to keep their data segregated because each of these dental offices are separate businesses. So I'm providing the backup service for them, and I'm pulling their data into my data center. That counts as a cloud. One of the ways that I can do that is to use an appliance. The Backup Exec appliance already has Backup Exec installed. It already has all of the backup to disk devices configured, and it does data deduplication. The idea is that I can take this appliance and simply drop it in to a site that may not have an IT staff, and I can create jobs so that everything runs locally. In the old days, you used to have to put a tape drive out there and call somebody and say, please, please, please change the tapes for me. In this case, since everything is back up to disk, it's all centrally located. But I can also manage this device from a centralized data center. So if I have a small off-site facility, I can put an appliance in there, and it can do its backups locally, and then I can pull that data up to my data center. So I would automatically do backups locally with no intervention, and I would have off-site storage in the form of the data that's pulled up to my data center. So the appliances are very, very versatile. You can mix and match any of these pieces and parts. So if I'm a larger company, I can have my own data center where I'm doing backups of the data center locally, but I may have several smaller sites where I put in an appliance. So you can mix and match any of the pieces of this together. As far as Backup Exec 2012 Essentials, one of the new things to this version of the product is virtual to physical backup. Physical to virtual backup, P2V. I can also do backup to virtual, which is B2V. The idea here is that you can back up a physical machine. As you're backing it up, that backup can be converted to a virtual machine. I can also schedule that conversion so that it happens at a later time. So you can choose how flexible you want your recovery to be. Or you can take existing backup sets. I just do a regular backup every night, and if that server goes down for any reason, I can click on the backup set and say convert that to virtual. And it automatically becomes a virtual machine. We can do backups to tape, backups to disk, all the way that we have done it always. And then you can also do all of these backups to a data deduplication destination, which saves you a great deal of space when you do backup to disk. So it lowers my storage costs. And the idea here is that you can keep your backups in the same amount of disk space for a much longer period of time. Also new to this version of the product is simplified disaster recovery. That's a completely integrated bare metal disaster recovery, but you can also do disaster recoveries as virtual machines. And whether you choose to do it as a simplified disaster recovery or virtual machine, you still get the whole granular ability that Backup Exec has had for years. And that is the ability to restore individual files and folders or individual email items or mailboxes to from either a physical or a virtual backup to either one as well. This version of Backup Exec has extremely streamlined the administration console. It's much easier to use. It is a very resource-centric viewpoint of your network. Instead of being job-centric as older versions of Backup Exec were, it is very resource-centric. So what you care about is that you're backing up your server. You really don't care about the jobs that are required to back up the server. You just want to know the server's backed up. So that's how Backup Exec presents it to you. And we will automatically configure many of your backups with intelligent defaults, meaning for simplified disaster recovery and for granular recovery. We'll go through much of that in detail as we go through the rest of this course. Backup Exec components. When I install Backup Exec, one of the things that will be installed on the Backup Exec server is the Backup Exec database, or BEDB. This is a Microsoft SQL database that by default is installed in SQL Express. You are welcome to install it in fully licensed SQL. Along with the database, when you run backups, we keep catalogs of what got backed up and where it got sent to. The catalogs are just flat files. They will be by default on the Backup Exec server. The database contains an index to those catalogs. There are also many services to Backup Exec. We'll take a look at those services. The services will vary depending upon what options you have installed in addition to Backup Exec. There's also an administration console that will be installed by default on the Backup Exec server. All of your interaction with Backup Exec is through this console. Everything that you do in the console is entered into the database. So everything that you create, your jobs, your storage devices, all of that is really database entries. The console can also be installed on the machine where you sit every day. So the machine where you read your email and you do your work every day, you can install the console. If I install the console on the machine where I work every day, when I open the console, it's going to ask me to which Backup Exec server do you wish to connect. So if I have multiple Backup Exec servers, I can connect to each server individually. And I can manage all my servers, but at this point all I can see is one at a time. There is an option to Backup Exec, it's in the Enterprise option, that you can manage all of your Backup Exec servers from a single set of windows, and that option is known as the Central Admin Server option. It all runs through the same console. It all feeds the same database. It's just what are you seeing. I also have to determine where do my backups go. So I have to set up my storage devices. You should have at least one backup to disk location. The backup to disk location can also be configured as a data deduplication destination. You can configure tape libraries, removable disk storage, but I have to say, where do my backups go? The machines that I wish to back up also must be running an agent. So file servers, database servers, we don't care whether they're physical or virtual. If I'm going to back it up, it needs to be running an agent. There are two agents for these machines. You have the agent for Windows and the agent for Linux. In Backup Exec terminology, if it's running an agent, it's a client. Even though it's probably server OS, it's a client to the Backup Exec server. And the agents are then responsible for gathering up the data and sending it to the Backup Exec server, which in turn sends it to your data destination, your disk storage or your tape storage. So the Backup Exec server is responsible for talking to the client machines, right, the servers that you're backing up, whether they're physical or virtual, and asking for that data. Backup Exec will always use the native API calls to ask for that data nicely. We'll talk about this more when we get into the individual types of data that we back up. So it's not only requesting the data to be backed up, but on the recover side, on the restore side, the Backup Exec server is responsible for sending that data back. The default is when you do restores, it will always send the data back to the same location from which it was backed up. If you wish to redirect it, you can, but you must tell it that you want it to be directed and then give it that location. So I can redirect to any device, whether it's physical or virtual, regardless of where it came from, provided that the type of data is supported, meaning that if I backed it up from an Exchange server, I have to restore it to Exchange. All right, so you can back up the data from anything that's running an agent and restore it back to either where it came from or redirect it as needed. This is the first time we've seen the new console. This is the console for Backup Exec 2012. As I mentioned earlier, it is very resource-centric. It is designed so that you're looking at your servers in your environment, and it will show you exactly what's going on with the backups. So it focuses more on the servers being backed up than the actual backup jobs themselves. On the far right, you see the last 7 days of backup jobs. The current day will always be on the far right, and it will give you a little green indicator for valid backup jobs and a red indicator for backups that have had a problem. Toward the center where you see active alerts, you'll see if you've had any kind of message from Backup Exec regarding the backups for that server. Everything is right here at your fingertips. You can double click on any one of these servers to get into more details, and you can also create groups of servers, and we're going to go into that in more detail. At the very top, you see the tabs that are, you see the Backup Exec button tab, the Home tab, Backup and Restore, Storage, and Report. So it's very simplified from the older versions of the product. When you click on any one of those tabs, what you see on the ribbon underneath the tabs are the options that are applicable to the tab that you clicked on. All right, so if I click on Storage, I'm going to see options applicable to storage. The bottom part of the screen is the details about where you are, and we're going to go through these screens in detail. At the very bottom, what you see are alerts that have to do with you've had messages from Backup Exec, and just to the right of the alerts, you see the jobs, and you see what jobs are running, what jobs are on hold, and the very far right shows that we have a connection to the database. So all of this was in the previous Windows in Backup Exec. It may have just been in different locations. Licensing for Backup Exec. You have to license the core product, and when you license the core product, it includes the open file option, which has not always been true with Backup Exec. And then I have to have licenses for any of the agents for the type of data that I wish to back up. So I have to purchase a license for the agent for VMware or the license for the agent for Hyper-V. We gave it one name, and it's one installation. You should buy a license for every host that is hosting guests. So if I have 2 ESX servers that are running VMware, I should have 2 agents for VMware and Hyper-V. The agent for applications and databases is a new name to this version of the product. It is one agent, so you just have one thing to purchase, and it used to be several different pieces. It still is under the hood several different pieces, but the idea is that we have made it easier to purchase licenses and install them. So if I am trying to back up a SQL server and an Exchange server, what I would need to do is buy 2 licenses for the agent for applications and databases. For most of these pieces, Exchange, SQL, Active Directory, that you see listed on the screen, when you install the agent for applications and databases, it unlocks the functionality. Much like when I install Windows 7, it's all one installation CD, but it depends on what license key you put in, whether you get Windows 7 Enterprise or Windows 7 Professional. So Backup Exec works very similarly, that the functionality is there. It depends on what license keys you enter, how much of that functionality you get to use. The agent for Windows comes with either any of the above agents that I've talked about. So when I purchase the agent for VMware or Hyper-V, I have also purchased the right to put the agent for Windows or the agent for Linux in any guest that is running in that hypervisor host. If you want to do granular recovery, you must put the agent in any guest. But when I purchased the agent for VMware or Hyper-V, I have also purchased the right to put that agent for Windows or Linux in any guest. When I purchased the agent for applications and databases, those agents unlock functionality on the backup exec server, but I must also put an agent for Windows or an agent for Linux on the machine that's running that type of data. So if I were backing up Exchange, I would have to put the agent for Windows on the Exchange server. When I purchase a license for the agent for applications and databases for Exchange, I have also purchased the agent for Windows that goes on that Exchange server. So there's no extra charge for the agent. You also have a remote media agent for Linux. This is an agent that was introduced some time ago that allows the Linux server to do its own backups to its own destinations. So if I have a Linux server that has a tape drive attached to it, I can put the remote media agent for Linux on that Linux server and tell backup exec to tell that Linux box to do its own backups to its own tape drive, and all I'm doing with the Windows side is managing the backups. But the backups will always be run in a native Linux format to a destination that Linux server can access. So it makes this remote media agent for Linux become basically a managed backup exec server when we talk about the central admin server option. We also have an agent for Macintosh that you would need to install on any Mac machines that you wish to back up. And again, it backs them up in their native format. Several different licensing options. I have mentioned a couple of these already. The Enterprise Server option is a bundle. It includes the license for the core product, a license for the Central Admin Server option, also known as CASO, a license for the Shared Storage option, also known as SSO, and I'll go into details about what that is in a moment, and the Advanced Disk-Based option, also known as ADBO. ADBO does off-host backups. So if I have an off-host machine, often this is used to replicate Exchange, that we can then back up the off-host machine. We have an Exchange mailbox archiving option that allows me to back up data from the Exchange server based on the date, how long it's been on an Exchange, and take it out of the Exchange server and put it into a vault that Backup Exec manages. That's licensed per mailbox that you wish to archive. And we have 10 user packs and 100 user packs. It's very inexpensive. The first time I heard that, was a bit surprised that that's how it was sold, but it is very inexpensive per mailbox. The data deduplication option comes as part of the Enterprise Server option. So if you purchase the Enterprise Server option, you also get the data deduplication option. You can also purchase the data deduplication option independently if you purchase a different version of Backup Exec. VTL Unlimited Drive option. VTL stands for Virtual Tape Library. And this is a virtual tape library allows you to create as many virtual tape drives as you would like to. Backup Exec supports one tape drive per device. If it's a physical robot, we support one tape drive in that physical robot. If it's a virtual tape library, we still only support one tape drive. You can purchase the library expansion option for every drive greater than one. So if I have a physical tape library that has 3 drives in it, I would need to purchase the Enterprise Server option plus, if I had purchased anything besides the Enterprise Server option, I would have to purchase a library expansion option for every drive greater than 1. The Virtual Tape Library Unlimited Drive option has a limit, and I know the name is unlimited, has a limit of 80 drives. You can create up to 80 virtual tape drives. which most of the time would run you out of resources. So it is unlimited from that standpoint. The file system archiving option is also part of the enterprise server option, and this allows you to do pretty much the same thing with file systems that I had talked about with Exchange, meaning that I can say, let's look at my user home directories, and anything that's in those user home directories that is greater than, pick a number, 2 years old, is going to get taken out of that user home directory and put into a vault that Backup Exec manages. And you can say how long it lives in the vault. So it can only live in the vault for 3 years, and then it goes away. The NDMP option is also included with the enterprise server option. It's another one that can be purchased separately. This allows you to, if you have an NDMP device, like a NetApp filer, that has its own tape drive, I can use Backup Exec to manage that NDMP device's backups to that device. So I don't have to go into the NDMP interface. I can use the Backup Exec interface to send the backup commands to that NDMP device and tell it to write to its own tape drive. If you have this option, though, Backup Exec can also send other backups to that tape drive if you needed to use it. The storage provisioning option is particular to OEM'd hardware, and this is an option that allows me to configure RAID arrays as a backup destination. So if you have, and I know Dell is one of the providers for this hardware, that if I purchase the Dell hardware of a RAID array, then I can use the storage provisioning option to configure how I want that RAID carved up and presented to Backup Exec as a Backup Exec destination. Desktop laptop option is now a standalone product, and you have to purchase it separately. That's a change from older versions of the product. You install agents and options very similarly to how we have done it in the past. This is going through the installation screens, but you can also do this by clicking on the Backup Exec button at the top of the screen. And you'll notice it's a very simplified screen if you're familiar with the older versions of the product. That instead of having an agent for applications and databases with all of the different agents underneath, it's all one checkbox now. And on the right, you see that it supports all the different agents: Enterprise Vault, Lotus Domino, Exchange, SharePoint, and SQL. And if you could scroll down, it also supports several others. The agent for VMware and Hyper-V is still one installation, but you would have to have an installation for each if you were backing up both. So I would have to license that agent twice. And then also you see the remote media agent for Linux on this screen. You'll notice as you come down the screen under Enterprise Server option that the Central Admin Server option is listed there. So this is where I can do centralized management of multiple Backup Exec servers, and that now includes the shared storage option that used to be listed separately in the past. So they really tried to simplify installation and agents in this version. Terminology that has changed from older versions. Intelligent disaster recovery is now simplified disaster recovery. More than just the name has changed, though. How this works has changed, and we have a whole lesson on simplified disaster recovery. A media server is now known as a Backup Exec server. A managed media server is something that you used to have in the Central Admin Server option. This is now known as a Backup Exec, a managed Backup Exec server, or MBS. We'll see this later as we go through the lessons. A backup to disk folder is now known as a legacy backup to disk folder. These get converted based on how much data is in them, and they will probably be read-only. And I'll talk about the rules for that as we get through the installation lesson. But old backup to disk folders that you've had in the past are going to get converted to legacy backup to disk, and all but one will become read-only. The remote agent for Windows, also known as RAWS, is now just the agent for Windows. So they have simplified the acronyms. The remote agent for Linux and Unix servers, also known as Rallus, is now just the agent for Linux. And you'll notice that the Unix is gone. This agent no longer supports Unix. So it no longer supports Solaris specifically. And that we now have an agent for Mac that used to be known as a remote agent for Mac. Architecture. How does the architecture work in Backup Exec? I can install Backup Exec so that it is simply a Backup Exec server with remote agents on the machines that I wish to manage, and I have my admin console so I can manage it. And in some environments, for networking reasons, for political reasons, for geographic reasons, I might have multiple Backup Exec servers installed, but they're each their own little universe. They're each their own database, they manage their own jobs, and they know nothing about each other. They can't back up each other's machines. So in a very small environment, I would only have one Backup Exec server. It is possible for me to have multiple Backup Exec servers, and in this configuration, they don't know anything about each other. I can, if I choose to, if I install either the Central Admin Server option or the Backup Exec Enterprise option, I can promote one of those servers to a Central Admin Server. And you see that on the bottom of the slide. Promoting this Central Admin Server is very much like doing a DC promo in Active Directory. You're promoting it to the top layer. And then the other Backup Exec servers in the environment would become managed Backup Exec servers. When I do this, I can manage all of my jobs and all of my backups from one screen. So the Central Admin Server allows me to scale Backup Exec into much larger environments. The number of backups that the Central Admin Server can manage is really based on the number of jobs and not the number of Backup Exec servers that it's managing. So a Central Admin Server can manage up to or a little over 10,000 jobs. It doesn't really matter how many Backup Exec servers are doing the backups. Now in a large environment where that Central Admin Server is running that many jobs, that's all it does, is it manages the jobs and keeps track of the storage destinations and the media to which the backups are being written. And the backup servers, the managed Backup Exec servers, are who is responsible for actually running the jobs. So this can scale into very large environments. The largest environment that I am personally aware of has over 500 Central Admin servers. That's 500 machines running 10,000 jobs each. So Backup Exec can scale into very, very large environments, but it can also run in very small environments, which makes it a very flexible piece of software. I can do central administration servers to the cloud. The easiest description of this is if I am a managed service provider and I provide services to lawyers' offices so they don't have to have IT staff, and dentist offices so they don't have to have IT staff. What I can do is in my data center install the Central Admin option, and in the lawyer's office install a managed Backup Exec server, and in the dentist office install a managed Backup Exec server. I can manage all of their backups regardless of which business I am providing services to, but I'm bringing all that data up into my cloud as deduped data, meaning that all that's being sent across the wire is the deltas, the things that have changed since the last time I did a backup. So it's very fast and very efficient. And we'll go into this in more detail in a couple of the other lessons, one of them being the lesson on backing up to the cloud. The Enterprise Server option is actually a consolidation of the Central Admin Server option, the Shared Storage option, and the Advanced Disk-Based option. There are two ways that this can be installed. If you want to use the central admin server, then you would have the enterprise server option for each central admin server in your environment. And the advanced disk-based option can be used on up to 5 other backup exec servers. The shared storage option is integrated as part of the central admin server, but I do not have to have the central admin option. If I simply want to install backup exec on many servers, I can do that as well, and I can support up to 5 backup exec servers in that environment. And in that case, they would each be individual databases and each managing their own individual jobs. To install the enterprise server option, I have to tell it whether or not I want it to be the central admin option and how you want catalogs to be configured. And we'll go into catalog configuration in the later lessons in backup exec. At this point, the important thing to know is the default is that the catalogs will be listed in both places. So if we go back to my example of I'm a managed service provider for a lawyer's office and a dentist's office, the catalogs will be at the lawyer's office and at my central admin server in the cloud, meaning that I could do restores from either location. You can change that, but that's the default option. Using backup exec in a shared storage area network, SAN or storage area network, often confuses the folks who sell backup exec. They think that if you have a storage area network that you must buy the shared storage option, also known as SSO, that is now integrated into the central admin option. And the rule for this is not so much whether you have a SAN. Many people do, but the rule for this is, am I sharing the destination for the backups between backup exec servers? So on the slide, you'll notice that you have on the far left, you have a central admin server, and I have 2 managed backup exec servers. In this case, all 3 devices going through that fiber channel switch can share the storage disk array on the left and the tape drive on the right. If it's shared destinations, then you must have the shared storage option. And because we have combined the shared storage option into the central admin option, you now must have a central admin option. If you choose not to centrally manage the backups, the rule is the same. In that case, though, I would have 3 separate backup exec servers, but because they're all sharing the same destination, I would have to still have a license key for the central admin option, even though I'm not centrally managing. And the key to this is, are they sharing the destination? If each of those backup exec servers in this slide had its own device physically attached to that server, I would not need the central admin option or the shared storage option. But they could only write to the device that was attached to that server. They could not share any devices. And if I install the central admin server, this is what we've seen before, that I have unrestricted access to the catalogs, meaning that the catalogs will be in both places. They will be on the managed backup exec server and on the central admin server. The BE appliance is a piece of hardware that you purchase that already has backup exec installed, all of the license keys. It already has data deduplication storage drives configured so that you can do backups using this appliance to its own disk space. And then I can duplicate those backups off to another backup exec appliance or another backup exec server or a network attached storage or tape or USB, any place that you want it to go. So the idea is that I can drop this appliance into a small office that doesn't have much IT staff, if any, and configure it to run the backups, and it will do the backup to disk, and everything is local. And then I can copy those backups to removable storage or RDX or tape as needed. But the idea here is it's a very simple to set up and manage scenario. If I have multiple appliances, I can also duplicate backups between those appliances. So if I have an appliance in my small offsite facility and I have an appliance in my data center, I can do the backups to the small offsite facility locally. They're going to be deduplicated, meaning that it's only going to store what's changed since the last backup. And when I duplicate that up to my data center, what's going to get duplicated is just the deltas or the things that have changed. So it's extremely efficient in how it stores data and how data is transmitted across the wire. So it's using very little bandwidth to do that duplication. And the duplication could be to another device, or it could be to a full backup exec server up at the top. And that's what you see in the bottom of this slide, is I'm duplicating multiple devices through the WAN or the LAN up to a central admin server in the data center. Very versatile, can be scaled into any environment. So we have talked about how backups are important, Symantec's different backup solutions. We've covered the key benefits and functionality of Backup Exec, and we've talked about the various architecture configurations that can be used to install Backup Exec. As far as reference materials, the administrator's guide is installed as part of the Backup Exec installation, so it's a PDF that is always available to you. You can open that PDF and do searches. You can also download the PDF from Symantec.com. Live Update is how Backup Exec is updated itself. We'll talk about that more in the installation chapter, but there's a user guide for that. The location where you can download the best practices documents, the user guides, and any tech notes that you choose to is Symantec.com/business/support.